I was 16 years old when the lights went out for the first time. It wasn't an endless pitch black, but a semi-sweet fade of darkness, just enough to hide, or at least blur my thoughts. At least I hoped. I was afraid, and the wool covers were pulled over my head as I laid in a fetal position underneath, still wearing the bulky orange jumpsuit that was given to me. It reminded me of a pumpkin. Somehow, all these years later, I remember thinking about Halloween, and for that brief moment, I wasn't afraid, just for a second. But I was sweating and drenched. It was hot, so hot, like the furnace of hell. There were a few industrial fans buzzing, vibrating the entire dormitory. I could feel the concrete from the floor and the metal from the bunk moving underneath me. The hot air was being blown away from me, but I couldn't escape the heat. My bunk was underneath one of the heavy fans. I was covered in my blanket and my fear, so I couldn't see anything, but I felt everything. The atmosphere was breathing. It was alive, like a real living person. The atmosphere, it embodied fear and anger and secrets. I was frozen stiff in hell. It was all I could do to breathe softly so no one could hear me. I hoped they'd forget me, or even not notice me. But somehow, I could hear their thoughts, and they were ugly as decay. They were the thoughts of monsters, no demons, because even monsters have a heart, but demons have an empty hole that leads straight to hell. What time was it? It had to be past midnight, and maybe everyone was sleeping. And the piercing thoughts that I could feel were just dreams and nightmares of the men who laid all across the dorm's bunks. I mustered up enough courage to glance from underneath my covers, and there they were, in the semi-darkness, big bulging white eyes staring right at me. Unblinking, I quickly pulled the covers back over my face, but it was too late. The eyes had seen me. The giant white eyes that didn't blink from the darkness on the man who slept right across from me. My soul screamed in agony, but my silence was loud. I knew he could hear me. If no one else could, he could. I had never prayed before, but in that moment, my trembling lips uttered a futile plea. I instantly wanted to go home, to be safe and secure, protected in my own room, but it was my only thoughts of fear that conjured up the comforts that were now so far away. Then my heart sank into the abyss as I heard what sounded like footsteps, like feet dragging across the cold concrete. I could hear them. It had to be the one with the unblinking white eyes. He was coming to check on me. I wanted to die, but I couldn't. I knew only fear and despair. Why couldn't I find courage or rage? Why were they eluding me? I was a coward. I wanted to take off my orange pumpkin suit because I knew sleeping in it made me vulnerable, but I assumed it would protect me like armor. Now I wish I had removed it. I had to react. I had to respond. There was nowhere to run, and hiding was in vain. It was time to face my fears and confront the unblinking white eyes. But before I could face my fears on my own terms, my fears exposed me as my thick wool covers were slowly peeled away from my face. And there they were, the unblinking white eyes, and now there was a giant sinister white smile accompanying them. The man who stood towering over me was darker than the night, and his skin glistened, and for the first time I could smell. It smelled like lust. He lifted his finger to the sinister grin to inform me to remain silent, but now I really wanted to scream. If I did, then maybe someone would notice and save me. Then, as if my prayers were answered, another giant man came walking towards us. I felt relief that he was coming to my aid. Instead, he stumbled right past us like a mortified zombie, all the while my visitor was removing my covers. As he got into my bunk, my thoughts wondered if we could even fit in it together. But then, he pulled me close, and I allowed it. A toilet flushed harshly in the distance, and the mortified zombie strolled past Again, this time back to his own coffin, his own bunk. He either didn't notice what I was going through or didn't care. I was alone in a warehouse full of men. I was alone. But now, my nightmare was just beginning. Now, fear had not just embraced me, but overtaken me.